Hey, it's Brad. I'm here at Banger HQ. There's Christmas trees behind me. Guess what that means? It's time for me to unwrap my favorite albums of the year and present them to you as gifts for your ears. You're welcome. Oh, and these are in no particular order, just kind of the order that I felt flowed best from one album to the next. So it's not like this is 1 and this is 10, or this is 10 and this is 1. It's just, it is what it is. So deal with it. But first off, I got to start with an honorable mention because I manage this band, so it's like a conflict of interest. And also, it's really hard to listen to this album a lot because it is just punishingly intense. The band is Vitriol. The album is Suffer and Become. Came out on Century Media. This band is just punishing death metal that is played with black metal ferocity and atmosphere. And it's technical by like sheer brute force. Like, it's not tech death, but they're playing technical just because they have so much to get off their chest, so many notes to express themselves. And the art is similarly thought-provoking. And we actually just did a much-demanded merch drop featuring that. That's on Indie Merch now. I'm going to stop talking about them because I manage them. It's a conflict of interest. But check this out. Transition. One of my favorite albums last year was Nithing's Agonal Hymns. Matt Kilner does everything for Nithing, plays drums and Vitriol. And this first album, similar genre, same label, I'm going to talk about Indecent Excision and their album Into the Absurd, which came out on New Standard Elite.
And we just keep on going more fast because it's what we want to do now, going more fast.
If you recall my Indonesian brutal death metal episode of Overkill Global, you know that I was particularly enamored with like the balls to the wall speed of perverted dexterity. There's another band that scratches that same itch. And yes, I did just say balls to the wall and scratch because I am hilarious. And that is Putridity. They share a member with Indecent Excision. It's actually the bass player, and the bass is phenomenal on this album. Brutal death metal is one of the rare genres that has a bass-forward mix, so you can really hear what's going on, and often it is distinct from just following the guitar. It's doing its own thing. It's poppy, it's punchy. It makes it feel more brutal. Now, of course, the drums are, lightning speed. The guitars shred and chug and squeal appropriately, and the vocals are inhuman. There's some serious burping here, but the whole package is just incredible, fast, and a lot of fun. This is extreme brutal death metal. Transition. Speaking of Italian brutal death metal that shares a member with Putridity, or in this case, it's going to be an ex-member, I need to shout out another favorite of mine, Vomit the Soul's album, Massive Incineration. I named their 2021 album Cold as my favorite of that year, thanks to their ability to make brutal death metal just insanely catchy, groovy. That was their first album in 12 years. Between the last Indecent Excision and this one, it's only 9 years. And between a couple of years ago and now for Vomit the Soul, they've only gotten more extreme. As you heard at the end there, they definitely do retain that groove, but it feels more balls to the wall, which is apparently the phrase of today. Perhaps that's because the addition of new drummer goes by the nickname Brutal Dave. Not saying that their previous drummer was a slouch. Loved his performance, loved the album he played on. But I mean, it's in the guy's name, Brutal Dave. I think they do it without a space in between it. So it's just Brutal Dave, which is fast and speed, can be very brutal. So shout out Brutal Dave. If the last couple Vomit the Soul albums were like 3 parts, still brutal, but groove, with 2 parts, you know, the speedy, extreme, all at once brutality, this kind of inverts the formula, you know, 2 in the groove and 3 in the extremity. I've sounded like I was going somewhere else with that, but I was not. I just don't know how to speak very well, but these gentlemen know how to play brutal death metal very well. And I'm here to speak about it, so you listen to it. Transition. Now we're heading out of Italy, west to Spain, where one of the most celebrated brutal death metal bands, Wormed, is from. And they released their first album in 8 years, Omegon, this year. And what's up with all the long waits between albums? Brutal death metal has got to figure that out, because we need more of it. So why is this band so much more celebrated than many of their peers? I think a reason is they put technicality at the forefront, perhaps a little more musical, maybe could even convince Blaine to like it a little bit, maybe just a bit. They also have this extreme dissonance, like this blackened dissonance that is... It changes the mood and perhaps allows for a bit of a reprieve from the balls to the wall, you knew I was going to say it, of a lot of brutal death metal. Sure, there are blasts, there are slams, of course, but there's more. And this next part that I'm going to play is simultaneously a breakdown, and no, not like a deathcore band, though I wouldn't have a problem with that, you know this. A like dissonant mood setter. I don't know if it's dissonant and that's like disturbing. Is it mood ruiner? It makes my mood good because I like it. Clip. There's a lot of groove there at the end. And when I say groove, it's very musical, very seemingly informed by theory and whatnot. And perhaps that's also what makes this a little bit more palatable than a lot of other brutal death metal. It kind of reminds me of the jazzy influences on Defeated Sanity, which they also released a great album this year. You should listen to it. But after you listen to this one and have your mind warped into space and exploded by aliens probing it with their musical, technical, brutal, dissonant insanity, which sounds like music that aliens would make, actually. Transition. This one really takes the cake of the really long wait, that kind of rhymed, for album releases, again, within the brutal death metal umbrella. It's time from Legends, Brodequin, releasing their first album in 20 years here. It's called Harbinger of Woe. The band is named after a medieval torture ritual, and it's appropriate that they are named as such because they are legends of this space. However, it's borderline inappropriate because a Brodequin is like, you have these things in your leg and they keep slamming, pieces of wood in there until it crushes your leg. And it would be an impossibility for them to play double bass as fast as they do here. They couldn't have their blasts go as fast if their bones had turned to ash. So anyway, let's check it out. As you hear there's more of like a grindiness to this. It's fast. It's got a lot of energy, as is the punkiness of grind. And then when it slows down for like a groove or a slam, it gives you whiplash, but not in like a damn, like I'm not going to be able to move my neck for weeks, months. It's more like a bumper car where you hit somebody and you go, whoa, and it's, you're shaking and and then a second later you're laughing because you're having a good time and you're just having a blast. I didn't mean that to be a pun on blast beats, but I'm going to run with it. Transition. Speaking of death grind, I have to give props to one of my favorite bands for a very long time, Aborted, and their new album, Vault of Horrors. But sorry, I'm going to do that again. Actually, let's leave the burp in. It's appropriate. Anyway, I used to do socials for Aborted, but I don't now. So there's no conflict of interest here. Well, there kind of is because they're my friends. But anyway, long story short, they started in Belgium and they still have a Belgian, but now they've expanded worldwide. They have a couple Americans. They have in Icelandic, don't know. And as they've been expanding their membership across the globe, they've also been expanding their sound. It's gotten more technical. It's gotten less genre specific. It's a lot of tropes of any modern extreme metal put together. And I feel that this album is something of the pinnacle of that for them. I've seen some, previous fans or even people who were never fans just want a reason to hate, who say that they're too deathcore, which again, I wouldn't have a problem with. But on this album, Aborted basically says, fuck you to anybody who would hate them for that by inviting a litany of guests on this album, including many from the deathcore scene and many from, more traditional extreme metal here. It's like, you have a problem with this? Cool. These are our friends and they're talented and it sounds great. I maybe a little bias here. My friend Lindsay Schoolcraft, who you may know, she's been on a few episodes here, used to be in Cradle of Filth. She said that this album is like it's like Aborted and Bradley's Friends. And it's kind of true. There are 3 bands I manage represented in the guest vocals. We've got Signs of the Swarm, we've got Of Sulfur, we've got Carcosa. And then there are plenty of other bands with whom I am friends, such as Despised Icon, Ingested, Archspire, Cryptopsy, Shadow of Intent. So it's a party. The way that the band makes their guests fit with the part while still feeling effortlessly like it's Aborted, like it's part of the same song and therefore the same album, is a major reason why it manages to be cohesive despite there being so many cooks in the kitchen. Transition. We're just talking about guests. Check out this awesome segue because I kick ass. This next band are guests on Aborted's headline North America tour. This band is Peeling Flesh, and they released their album this year called The G Code on Unique Leader, and it rocks. These Oklahoma City crushers have 2 releases called Slamaholics, and indeed, they seem addicted to slamming you and me and our ears. However, it never gets boring thanks to these creative additions such as rapping, DJ scratching. It's brutal. The gutturals are nasty. There's some amazing guest vocalists going on here, including Maddie Way. You got the Despised Icon guys. Everything is executed really well. And there's just that one extra thing that takes it over the edge and makes it truly special. And this is unique. This is special. This is the G Code. brutal death metal has taken over my life. It's easy listening for me, something that I'm always having a good time with it, even if it's just background music. It seems like it's also been infecting elsewhere throughout the music scene, even on this album pick, which is Undeath and their new album So Insane, which came out on Prosthetic Records. There's a guttural on Wailing Cadavers, which I don't believe vocalist Alexander Jones has really done before. And there's another song, which is so brutal death metal that I can't fully remember it. And I'm going to have to look at the title. Disattachment of a prophylactic in the brain. And it's got other, slammy, brutal parts in it, and just sounds like a brutal death metal song. That's not to say this is a brutal death metal album. Like, don't get it twisted. That title is also just like the school from which Undeath hail. They embrace the campiness of death metal, the gore, the carnage, the insanity. It's camp, it's fun. With their embrace of fun and how they kind of present themselves, they're the people's people. They remind me of, a spiritual successor to the Black Dahlia Murder. And if you're not paying attention, each Undeath album has kind of zoomed out. And now this one zooms out further to reveal that all of this was happening inside a decapitated head that's cleaved in two. And it's appropriate and prophetic that this is the art, the wider, bigger picture, the widest net for their sound. It's the most realized and sonically sounds the best. I've liked this band since they started, and this feels like the best thing that they've ever done. And I'm going to prove that to you with this next clip, which is one of the catchiest death metal songs I've ever heard. Speaking of catchy, I am now heading into metalcore territory. So if you are an elitist, you should leave now, because I'm going to talk about Boundaries and their new album, Death is Little More, which came out on 3 Dot Recordings. So when I say metalcore, I mean more in the vein of like Misery Signals. But if they were called Misery Signals, this is probably Misanthropy Signals, because these guys are fucking pissed. I mean, the first song on the album is called Turning Hate into Rage, and there's a breakdown call out that says, I fucking hate you. And I know normally that I've been playing music videos here, but I'm going to play a visualizer here because I want you to hear that part because it's so fucking sick. I fucking hate you! The choruses and singing on this album are not on every song. They're not shoehorned in. It's sporadic, nor does it feel that their execution is a formula in terms of this is how we do it. It always seems to present differently. I would say that there's no boundaries. Transition. One more for me, still in metalcore. The band is 156 Silence, or 156 Silence. I guess you could call them 156 Silence if you want. The album, however, is just called People Watching. And on it, it finds the band arriving at a more mature sound. The songwriting feels more polished. The heavy parts are still heavy, but they are experimenting with singing here. But like the Boundaries album, it's not all the time. It's not executed the same way. There's something special, I think, when bands start experimenting heavily with singing, where they fit it in where it needs to go, but they don't shove it in where it doesn't. And that's the case here. It's still heavy. I'm going to give you a clip. It's going to end with a breakdown because my name is Brad and you know I like breakdowns, and I think it's better to end this video with one of those than me talking. I've already talked enough. Thanks for watching the videos. I'm sure I'll be back a couple times next year. Have a good one. Listen to the breakdown.